The industrial production of dry ice begins long before a white block emerges from a press. It all starts with carbon dioxide, a gas that in industry is not usually produced solely for dry ice manufacturing, but is often recovered from other processes. Large chemical plants, distilleries, fertilizer factories, refineries, and bioethanol plants generate CO2 as a byproduct. Instead of releasing it directly, some of it can be captured, purified, liquefied, and reused for various industrial applications. The CO2 destined for dry ice must meet strict conditions. Simply capturing and cooling the gas is not enough. It must first undergo a cleaning stage because it may be mixed with moisture, particles, organic compounds, sulfur residue, or traces of other gases. If these impurities remain in the system, they can affect the quality of the dry ice, cause odors, reduce its efficiency, or damage sensitive equipment. In a large-scale factory, the gas enters through industrial pipelines into a treatment line. There, it is compressed to increase its pressure and facilitate the subsequent stages. Compressors are robust machines designed to operate continuously for hours, raising the pressure of CO2 to levels suitable for storage and liquefaction. During this compression, the gas heats up, so it needs to pass through heat exchangers that remove excess heat and stabilize the flow. Then purification begins. The CO2 is passed through mechanical filters that retain solid particles, separators that remove condensate, and drying systems that extract moisture. This step is crucial. Water within a cryogenic line can freeze, form crystals, clog valves, and cause malfunctions. Therefore, before transforming the gas into liquid, the factory minimizes the presence of water vapor. After drying, the gas can pass through activated carbon columns or absorbent beds capable of removing specific contaminants. In facilities that produce dry ice for food or pharmaceuticals, the requirements are even more stringent. The CO2 must have a purity level compatible with indirect or direct contact with sensitive products. Each batch can be analyzed with sensors and control systems that verify composition, pressure, temperature, and traces of impurities. Once treated, the carbon dioxide enters the liquefaction stage. For the CO2 to transform into liquid, the factory must combine high pressure and low temperature. The gas is compressed and cooled until it changes state. This liquid is unlike water. It remains stable only under controlled conditions, in special, pressurized, and thermally insulated tanks. These tanks are a central part of the factory. They have robust walls, safety systems, relief valves, level sensors, and temperature controllers. Liquid CO2 is typically stored at low temperature and high pressure, ready to be sent to the production machines. From the outside, the process appears quiet, but inside the plant, everything is precisely regulated. Every pressure variation, every temperature drop, and every change in flow can affect the performance of the final dry ice. The liquid CO2 moves through insulated pipes to the conversion units. At this point, the raw material is no longer a dispersed, invisible gas, but a concentrated cryogenic fluid, capable of transforming into dry ice when released under controlled conditions. This transformation occurs because carbon dioxide responds in a particular way to a sudden change in pressure. Upon rapid expansion, some of it cools so much that it solidifies, while some of it reverts to a gas. The efficiency of the process depends on how much liquid CO2 manages to solidify. In a well-designed factory, the gas that doesn't solidify isn't completely wasted. It can be recovered, recompressed, and returned to the circuit. This recirculation improves efficiency, reduces losses, and allows for more stable production. Modern industrial plants strive to make the most of the raw material because dry ice naturally sublimates and must be produced, stored, and distributed quickly. The preparation of the CO2 is, in fact, the foundation of everything. If the gas doesn't arrive clean, dry, stable, and properly liquefied, no press or extruder can produce good quality dry ice. Every block or pellet that appears at the end of the line depends on this first, invisible stage, where the factory transforms a gaseous byproduct into a cryogenic raw material ready to be solidified. The most striking transformation occurs when liquid CO2 enters the expansion chamber. At this stage, the the factory takes advantage of a physical property of carbon dioxide. By drastically reducing its pressure, some of the liquid immediately evaporates and absorbs heat from the remaining material. This heat loss is so intense that another fraction of the CO2 freezes, forming a kind of white snow, extremely cold and dry. This carbon dioxide snow is the first visible form of dry ice. It doesn't appear as a compact block, but rather as a light, granular, and brittle mass. Its temperature hovers around -78 degrees Celsius, which is why it cannot be handled directly with the skin. Any prolonged contact can cause frostbite. In an industrial factory, this snow falls into sealed chambers, hoppers, or molds, always controlled by automated systems. The expansion chamber is designed to withstand violent changes in pressure and temperature. Liquid CO2 enters through calibrated nozzles that regulate the flow rate. When it exits the chamber, the pressure drops sharply. The result is a mixture of cold gas and solid particles. The gas is extracted through special pipes, while the snow is deposited at the bottom or directed towards compaction systems. Snow has its uses on its own, but in most factories it's compacted to form denser, easier to transport products. Density is important because dry ice constantly sublimates. The more compact the product, the slower its mass loss typically is. That's why industrial blocks and well-compressed pellets last longer than loose snow. To manufacture blocks, dry clay snow is fed into a hydraulic press. This machine operates with enormous force. The snow accumulates inside a metal chamber, and then a piston compresses it, binding the particles together into a solid piece. The result can be a rectangular block, a thick slab, or a compact bar, depending on the mold used. The pressure eliminates air spaces, increases density, and allows the block to retain its shape. In some plants, the blocks are manufactured in cycles. First, the mold is filled with snow, then pressure is applied, then the block is ejected, and finally, the process is repeated. In large-scale factories, several presses can work in parallel, producing hundreds or thousands of kilograms per hour. Each block emerges with a white, opaque, and slightly rough texture. Its surface appears solid, but it is actually constantly releasing CO2, although this is not always visible. To produce pellets, the process is different. The dry clay snow is sent to an extruder or pelletizer. There, it is compacted and forced through a perforated die. The pressure forces the dry ice out in the form of small cylinders, which are then cut or fragmented. The size can vary depending on the use. Fine pellets for cryogenic cleaning, medium pellets for food preservation, or larger pieces for extended refrigeration. Dry ice pellets are especially important because they allow for a more uniform distribution of cold. In the food industry, they are used to quickly freeze products or maintain temperature during transport. In cryogenic cleaning, they are propelled by compressed air against industrial surfaces. Upon impact, they cool the dirt, making it brittle, and then sublimate, leaving very little residue. This ability to disappear without turning into water makes dry ice useful on electrical equipment, molds, motors, and production lines, where moisture would be a problem. Simultaneously, the factory must control the gas released during expansion. Some of the liquid CO2 does not solidify. It returns to a gaseous state. This cold gas can be recovered using suction systems, filtered, recompressed, and returned to the system. In simpler plants, some of it is vented in a controlled manner, but in larger installations, reuse is attempted to improve efficiency. Recovery requires additional compressors, heat exchangers, and pressure controls, but it reduces raw material consumption. Safety is a constant concern. CO2 is not flammable, but it can displace oxygen from the air. In enclosed spaces, a large leak can create a risk of asphyxiation without odor or clear warning. Therefore, dry ice factories have CO2 detectors, ventilation systems, alarms, entry protocols, and protective equipment. Workers wear insulating gloves, face shields, and special tools to handle blocks or containers. The temperature of the machinery is also carefully controlled. Although extreme cold is necessary to produce dry ice, it can shrink metals, harden seals, make some materials brittle, and affect mechanical components. Valves, gaskets, pipes, and chambers are manufactured with materials suitable for cryogenic service. The design must prevent pressure buildup, freezing blockages, and areas where CO2 can expand uncontrollably. The quality of the final product is measured by size, density, purity, temperature, and sublimation rate. An overly porous block loses mass rapidly. A poorly compacted pellet breaks before reaching the customer. Contaminated snow may be unsuitable for food or pharmaceutical applications. Therefore, the plant combines automatic sensors with visual inspections and weight checks. Manufacturing may seem simple, but it actually depends on a continuous chain of pressure, cooling, movement, and compaction. When the dry ice comes out of the press or pelletizer, it is ready, but it also begins to disappear. From that moment on, time becomes a critical factor. Every minute exposed to the environment means loss through sublimation. The factory must move it quickly to the storage and packaging stage, because manufacturing dry ice is not just about producing it, it's also about preserving it for as long as possible before it turns back into gas. Once dry ice is transformed into blocks, slabs, nuggets, or pellets, a race against time begins. Unlike other industrial products, dry ice cannot be stored indefinitely. Even in insulated containers, it constantly sublimates. This loss cannot be completely stopped, only reduced. That's why giant factories organize production based on demand, delivery routes, and customer type. Large blocks typically go through a cutting stage. Depending on the requested format, they can be divided into smaller pieces using industrial saws, blades, or automated sectioning systems. These tools work with an extremely cold and brittle material, so they must be designed to prevent irregular fractures. The goal is to obtain blocks of uniform weight that are easy to stack and compatible with insulated containers. Pellets and nuggets, on the other hand, go directly to sorting hoppers. There, they can be separated by size, have overly fine fragments removed, and be dispensed in specific quantities. Some customers need small bags for commercial or medical use. Others require large containers weighing hundreds of kilograms for food transport, industrial processes, or cryogenic cleaning. The same factory can produce different formats throughout the day by adjusting presses, dies, and packaging lines. Dry ice packaging follows a different logic than other products. It cannot be enclosed in completely airtight containers because, upon sublimation, it generates gas and increases internal pressure. A sealed container with no outlet can swell, rupture, or explode. Therefore, dry ice is placed in insulated containers that allow for controlled CO2 release. The key is maintaining the cold without dangerously trapping the gas. The most common containers are made of expanded polystyrene, special thermal boxes, industrial bins, or heavy-duty insulated containers. In pharmaceutical applications, validated packaging is used, capable of maintaining specific temperatures for a defined period. These systems may include sensors, temperature recorders, internal dividers, and layers of insulating material that regulate contact between the dry ice and the goods. In the medical cold chain, dry ice plays a critical role. It can keep vaccines, biological samples, reagents, or medications at very low temperatures during transport. For these uses, the amount of dry ice is carefully calculated. If too little is used, the temperature can rise before reaching its destination. If used excessively or poorly ventilated, CO2 can accumulate in enclosed spaces. Therefore, pharmaceutical packaging is designed with thermal calculations and specific transport regulations. In the food industry, dry ice is used to preserve meats, fish, ice cream, frozen foods, and perishable products. Its main advantage is that it cools without wetting. While regular ice melts, it leaves water behind. Dry ice evaporates as a gas. This allows frozen products to be kept frozen without puddles, dilution, or liquid contact. In some processes, it is also used to cool mixtures, control fermentation, reduce milling temperatures, or quickly freeze surfaces. Another important industrial application is cryogenic cleaning. In this case, the factory produces small, uniform pellets as they must travel inside a blasting machine. These pellets are accelerated with compressed air and strike the surface to be cleaned. The thermal shock contracts the dirt, making it brittle and easier to remove. The CO2 then sublimates, avoiding abrasive residues like sand or water. This is useful in rubber molds, automotive parts, turbines, printing presses, electrical equipment, and production lines where prolonged downtime would be costly. Storage within the factory is done in insulated chambers or containers. However, standard freezers are not used. Dry ice is much colder than a conventional, domestic, or industrial freezer, and it also releases gas. Storing it in unsuitable spaces can damage equipment, interfere with sensors, or create a buildup of CO2. Therefore, the plants use well-ventilated areas, appropriate thermal containers, and rotation protocols. The first items produced are usually the first items shipped. Logistics is a crucial part of the business. Because the product continuously loses mass, the distance between the factory and the customer matters a great deal. Routes are planned for fast delivery and to avoid delays. Vehicles may have ventilated compartments, insulated containers, and specific signage. In air transport, dry ice is regulated because it releases CO2 into the cargo hold. Each shipment must declare the quantity transported and comply with established safety limits. The factory also calculates the expected loss due to sublimation. A customer who buys 100 kilos may receive less if the journey is long or if the packaging is inadequate. Therefore, many deliveries include an extra quantity to compensate for this loss. This planning depends on the format, ambient temperature, type of container, and travel time. A large block may last longer than small pellets, but pellets offer a larger cooling surface area. Each application requires a different balance. In the largest factories, the entire process is controlled from control rooms. Screens display tank pressure, liquid CO2 temperature, production flow rate, compressor status, storage level, gas alarms, and press performance. Operators adjust parameters according to the type of dry ice requested. If demand increases, the plant can ramp up production, always within the limits of safety and liquid CO2 availability. Industrial dry ice manufacturing combines chemistry, thermodynamics, mechanical engineering, and logistics. It starts with a gas that often originates as a byproduct, purifies it, liquefies it, expands it, solidifies it, compacts it, and distributes it before it disappears again. Its value lies precisely in this temporary transformation, converting CO2 into portable, intense, and clean cold. At the end of the line, the white blocks and pellets that leave the factory look simple, but behind them are pressurized tanks, extreme temperatures, high-powered compressors, hydraulic presses, safety sensors, and a distribution chain designed against the clock. Industrial dry ice is not manufactured like an ordinary product. It is produced, protected, and delivered, knowing that from the first second, it begins to slowly return to the air.